Melisa Nielsen.
And I'm Erik Nielsen.
We're here to talk today about the scariness. No, not the scariness, just kidding. About what can happen at children's museums that I don't think museum curators think about.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of parents don't think about either.
And this isn't a museums are bad conversation.
No, actually we're going to talk about good museums and ones to stay away from.
Yeah, we've run into some ones that we were really confused who came up with the idea and why they would think that those are educational.
Right. And so I think that I'm thinking about, and I think this is good for neurotypical and especially for kids that are on the spectrum. But the dangers of being overwhelmed for a young child, and they're different for like 4, 5, 6 than they are for 10, 11, 12. I think they're totally different. In fact, I would say the 9+ set can handle it much easier, even if they're not neurotypical, than the younger set. But it's this idea that they go and they get like so overwhelmed. What things, because you've been, and I've been, but you've been to more recently than I have, what things at those museums do you think create that frenzy?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of different things that I found. Because there's like the Discovery Center type museum where it's like a toy box blew up.
Yeah.
But then I think about the one downtown
San Diego.
Yes, and the exhibits were created by modern artists. But I remember, even though it was supposedly geared towards children, there was one exhibit where there was all these different ropes and they were all put together with these little platforms. It was almost like a spider web. And the idea was that kids could pull on the ropes or go near different things and it would create certain sounds, like a soundscape. And the kids were like, this is creepy. Where are these sounds coming from? Why are we hearing this? Didn't make any sense, and it was done as it was like a modern art installation that was intended for children to climb around, but they didn't understand, and they were like, I don't know where these sounds are coming from. Every time I touch a rope or a cord, I hear these disembodied voices or sounds, and they were like, this is creepy. The other thing that was weird about that museum was there would be activities for like certain ages, but if you brought more than one kid of different ages, then they have to stand there and watch while the other kid does it.
Yeah, that's problematic.
It wasn't geared towards if you brought children of more than one age group, so it felt very much like the place was designed by somebody that maybe weren't familiar with children.
Only had one.
Even though it said, because it was obtuse, and it wasn't geared towards having kids of multiple ages there, and it was there was this, I felt like there was a big disconnect.
And I think that's what that's definitely what my experience has been too, is that the disconnect is in the way it's put together. Is there's not enough thought put to like what is actually nurturing to the child and what is nurturing to the child at different age groups. And so and I guess this would go towards a lot of places where they put the word children in the title, because it doesn't just have to be a children's museum. There are people that that put things together and they're not really thinking about, they think, oh yeah, this will be fun for kids. But maybe they don't have children, or maybe they have forgotten, maybe they're older and they have forgotten how overstimulated children get and what happens when they get overstimulated. There's this other host of things that kind of go along with it. But again, that's not all museums. I think that when I think about our children, I think their favorite places to go are definitely the more quiet museums. So we are blessed with Balboa Park here, which has 10 museums.
I think it's almost like
there's a bunch of museums all in one park, and they're big museums. They're like, there's a natural history museum, and there's a museum of man, which is kind of creepy. There's some creepy stuff there. It's more like an anthropology museum. Don't take little kids there. I mean, you can, but
they had an exhibit on torture once. I remember.
Yeah, they did. The torture.
You had to pay extra to go in, but we didn't do that.
We didn't do that. I'm not. Sign me up for that one. But a lot of people did. I think it did really well. But that's definitely not like a for kids.
Yeah.
There's gardens over there, and there's a science museum, and there's a lot of museums. So we end up going a lot. But the kids' favorite is this train museum, the model railroad museum, and so it's a museum where a lot of guys and I'm sure women too. I'm thinking grandpa men in my head is because that's like typically,
I mean, that's pretty much what's going on there.
It's a bunch of grandpas that have gotten together, and they bring their trains and they have them all set up. Which like from the wife's perspective, I'm thinking, sure, honey, you can go set that up at the train museum. Then it's not in the living room. That's what I'm thinking. But they're beautifully done, and they spend a lot of time working on landscapes, and the kids love it. They could be there for hours.
Yeah.
Hours and hours. And so I think a lot of it is stepping back and looking at what it is that your goal is from this museum. And so, the children's museums that are overstimulating are like a plague, I think. And I think that it's a trap.
Well, because we're also talking about the ones that often have discovery in the title.
Right.
Those are like a toy box blew up. Right.
And that's, I think we have to talk about the disarray in children that they just don't do well when it is overstimulating, and it is a disarray of there's this and there's this and there's this and there's just, and it's just this like one thing to another. It breeds this like anxiety within them. And I don't care what, like if it's a neurotypical child or a child on the spectrum, all children struggle with that anxiety when they have too much put before them. So if it's not laid out in a step-by-step, slower pace, then it's over anxiety producing. And I was trying to think, were there any other? Because we sort of talked about the museum that you took the kids to for co-op, and I know why our we run a Waldorf co-op, or I'm a co-leader for a Waldorf co-op, and I know why it was chosen. I had not ever been there, and my co-leader had never been there, but we had a specific thing in mind that they were going to show us, and so being at the museum was like supposed to be the icing on the cake, but it sounds like it was the poop in the bag. So you had mentioned that there was like a doctor's office station, and there was a thing on farming, and there was
and like this is how the post office or the grocery, I mean, I don't remember exactly, but it was all these different things.
Well, and I think that it's like this disconnect. When we were little kids, and I think a lot of homeschoolers, and I still do this, and I know a lot of our people that watch us do, we actually go to the post office and find out about those things. We actually go to a doctor's office and you find out about those things. Or you go talk to a farmer, or you go rather than having these sort of very disconnected experiences.
Well, it's almost like they're trying to find a sneaky way to be educated. I mean, a sneaky way to be educational. And I think kids sometimes can see through the fact that you're not being genuine about what your goal is and what you're trying to do.
Right, and I remember because the kids had all mentioned the activity that was the directed activity was it with Legos?
It was with these blocks that weren't Legos, and actually there was probably less room for creativity with these, as far as like everything being like 90 degrees. 90-degree angles. I don't know what the brand of these were, but then they were being asked to make like organic things, like animals or creatures. And with these things, that didn't lend themselves to that. So I'm not exactly sure what the point of the lesson was.
Took a bunch of Waldorf kids to a weird museum.
I'm not sure what the point of it was. There were other kids that
were like, what is this?
Because it just, what they were given didn't lend themselves to what they were asked to do.
Right. And there were lots of kids that you said were kind of struggling with that.
Yeah.
The whole concept.
I remember Sam being really confused. Like, I can't make what they're telling me to make with these.
Right, because it's not. So I do think there's a lot of this idea that it's a discovery place, that it's really becomes a trap. So I would say if you have children's discovery type museum ahead of you in a field trip or whatever, or you are wanting to go check it out, I would go check it out first. I would walk in and I would say, I really want to know what you've got going on here. And if they won't, without selling you a pass for the day, then you stand there and you talk to the museum curator and you say, so what things, which curator sounds really funny when we're talking about craziness that seems like it goes on there, but you say, what is it that your museum offers? What is it that, because there were some moms in our co-op that you said thought it was amazing, because that was the day that I didn't go, that he went. And you said they thought it was amazing. But I think those moms are moms that are struggling with overwhelm. Right? I mean, so I think that it's really when we're adults and we don't know how to self-regulate those overwhelm triggers, then it's easy to just let our kids just go and be. And that's fine when you're on a playground or you're in an open field or you're in a backyard situation or you're in a situation that is safe and conducive to that type of running and being and running and exploring. But when you're in a situation, especially with the younger children, I'm going to renew that and say 9+ is not such a big deal. But the 8 and under is definitely a time when they can get overwhelmed so easily.
Well, because that day,
that was the day that Soraya,
she had a rip-roaring fit that lasted
the entire ride home. So this was in Encinitas, which is about an hour from here, and you said she screamed the whole way home.
Yeah, and
the whole way home, and she's 6.
It was about some things that it wasn't something that happened directly from leaving, but it was the transition. Yeah, it was things that wouldn't normally resulted in a fit like that. It just built and built, and then she got really upset. But there was just so many things going on.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that is not on the radar of a lot of parents. So I'm hoping that beyond the Waldorf families that we talk to, I'm hoping that for the greater, the greater population, that understanding overstimulation in children is huge. I think that is a big, you really have to realize that when they're so small, it's coming at them. They're not going to it. It's coming at them. And it's very much like just being assaulted almost of their senses. I'm going to venture to say even children that are not struggling with sensory issues, if they are under 7, 8, it's not a great place for them. It is just too sensory overload for them. Take them to the zoo, take them to a more calmer museum, the aquarium, plenty of other places to take kids to that don't involve that. So Beth says, my struggle with Discovery museums are the gift shops. Yes, ma'am. Really, any museum with a gift shop, transitioning to the car without a stop there is a real struggle after the overstimulation. It is. And so, some of the things that we've done, because I think most museums end up in the gift shop. I was trying to think of maybe not the Natural History Museum. Mm-hmm. I think the gift shop is to the side as you walk out, but the aquarium ends up in a gift shop, or I guess it's next to the gift shop. I think that's like this really sneaky thing that the people that run it do. Yeah. That you have to, and I remember the zoo in Idaho Falls, you had to walk through the gift shop in order to get out.
Yeah, you did.
And in the San Diego Zoo, the gift shops are like, you're walking out, and they're like all right here. And so, it's definitely a matter of priming your kids, and we have always sort of done that. We've always sort of said, today we're not doing anything in the gift shop, or today we're just walking through, or because Soraya's I just want to touch it. I just look one more time. Like our zoo here has this whole section on unicorns, and holy cow, they're going to be the death of me.
Oh, the unicorn is in the store. Yeah, I was like, why are they?
This is a zoo. There's no unicorns here.
Why
does that have to be here? Because that's just like her kryptonite. That and zebras, but So, anyways, I think that I think you really have to look at that. So Sarah also says, I agree. We have a wildlife park, local injured animals, and my kiddos love it. Yes, see, I think that's really when they can go and connect. It's a much less overstimulating place, especially because typically at a zoo or wildlife park they can run. And they can get that crazy out, that they can feel the connection to the animals, and they can get that stimulation part out, and it's not so crazy. And Beth says, yes, The strategically placed locations feel like yes, it does feel like a gotcha to the parent, and I'm resentful. It's kind of like the candy on the aisle of the grocery store. Yeah, it's very frustrating. I agree.
And another thing if you're dealing with a child with sensory processing issues is, some museums will have like a movie, like a nature movie, and sometimes those are in 3D. And those stress her out.
Right. Yes.
The idea of the thing coming out of the screen.
I just think, I'm going to venture to say there's probably some research about this, but I would say a child under maybe even 10 probably should not have anything 3D. At least not real 3D. I think about some of the, like, we have some rides at Disneyland that have 3D, but it's not that. It's not real 3D.
Yeah.
Where any movie that you go and you sit through, it's a lot for their optical nerves to take in. It's a lot for their brain to take in, and it's too much. Way too much.
If it's a documentary with animals in it, then it's like you're in the room with the animals.
Right.
In your mind.
Which is okay for like a duck. It's not okay for a lion. That's find a time to have dad maybe with the younger child, because we do that. I mean, we have 5 children, so we've had children in all of these age groups at one time or another. And there have been opportunities or situations where we've had to say, we need to get a sitter for this child so that we can take the other children and go. So I do think it's important to be able to cultivate what the older children need. But again, that doesn't mean they need to just go and run crazy at the Children's Museum. Samuel doesn't have any sensory issues, and he hates the Children's Museum. Yeah. It's definitely not he wants to go where he can connect with something. And I think that most children would say that, especially if they are being raised in a more conscious situation. They would say, I want to be able to connect. I don't want to run crazy. When Beth says, I have a child with ADHD who's very young, 11, who's a very young 11. Each subject-specific museum, we are DC local. Oh, there's some awesome museums there, Beth. Are a real struggle for her. She has a tough time slowing down and taking things in. What would you suggest for helping her slow down and not suffer from anxiety and overwhelm? So, you have like the Smithsonian and some really awesome museums there. And we sort of have, even though we don't have museums to that scale, we sort of have the same, I'm thinking of the Mala museums that they have in DC. Mm-hmm. We sort of had the same deal with Balboa Park. It's the same idea.
Not like the same
it's
scale.
It's just not the same scale or the same quality, but definitely the same. There's some very high quality museums. So what we do is we would say, and I've done this with our other children, I was thinking about some times that I took Harry, our oldest. He's now 21, but I can remember when he was in that spot of needing it to be hyper focused. And it was when we lived in Idaho Falls. There was a museum that had the museum that was there had specific stuff that we were studying, but it was downstairs. Mm-hmm. And so we went, and I would prep him and say, we're going to go to the museum today, but we are not going to focus on anything that's upstairs. Do you remember that exhibit that's downstairs? We're going to go and check out that exhibit, because there was some local Idaho Falls history stuff that was downstairs. And so that's why I wanted to go to that part of the museum downstairs, because we were doing local history. And so I was very specific with him about why we were going. And when we did that, I made sure it was just he and I. So I think when you've got a child that is not neurotypical and that you're taking them to a place for an educational experience, and you know that they're going to have some overstimulation issues, you want to try your hardest to find a sitter for the other kids, or to go when dad's at home, or do some kind of trade-off with a friend, because I think that when you can really focus on that child, it helps them not be overwhelmed so much, because you're their security. And so when they have that opportunity to know, mom's here, she's got my back, she can hold my hand, I know she's got snacks if I need it, I know she's got water, I know she knows where the bathrooms are. That's the one, I always mapped out all the bathrooms and all the exit routes, because if you have a child that's really struggling, you need to be able to get them out fast. And there were opportunities in some situations where we might have had a guide. I was thinking about that museum in Idaho Falls, and we would let the guide know that we might have to leave, and can you show us where the quickest exits are in case we have to leave. So I think that preparing yourself in doing your due diligence about the museum, about the the situation that you're going, knowing what it is that you're going there for. So I had already been to that museum in this case, knew exactly what I wanted him to learn while we were there. And so I was able to translate that into, we were discovering it and he was discovering it for the first time a little bit, but I knew what we were going there for. And so that's just about doing your homework. And there are opportunities when that can't happen. Definitely, like we have the Getty Museum in Los Angeles. Eric's been there, but it's been years. I've never been there. So if we wanted to go there for art history and I don't know anything about the museum, I'm going to have to look at their website. I'm going to have to really do my homework as best as I can on knowing what it is that's there and what our purpose is for being there. And I think that's really important. But then there are situations like the train museum. You don't have to have a purpose for that. The kids will say, can we go to the train museum? Mm-hmm. They love going there. Our 17-year-old daughter, our 17-year-old daughter does not love it. She says it smells like old people. I don't know what she's talking about, but maybe it's because we're old. I don't know. It's just kind of funny. But you definitely want to know your audience, and she's not their audience. No. There are times when we just go. Obviously, we just go to the museum, but there are places again that we've been to that I know. So on our free day, on our fun days, we just go and we have fun. And so, but again, I know that there are places at the Natural History Museum that stress Soraya out, that like the giant shark, the megalodon shark that's hanging from the ceiling. It could be because I threatened to feed her to it one time. She's just been really naughty. Not my finest parenting moment at all. But she was like 2. Not my finest parenting moment. Anyway, so know your audience. Lennon says at ours, you have to go through the gift shop to pay to get in. Well, I guess on the way in is a little bit easier than on the way out. Yeah. A little bit. Because you can go, oh, we don't need to be here. Come on, let's go see the lions or whatever it is that you're going to see. But on the way out, you definitely have to prepare for that one. Beth says, yes, thank you. My neuroatypical child does so much better with one-on-one. Yeah. I always feel that these experiences are family experiences, but you're right. It would probably be better just me and her, or her father and her, especially for specific purposes in education. Absolutely. For specific purposes, that's what I'm saying. I'm not talking about, we're going to go hang out at the museum, because then if you've got dad there, then one of you can tend to the child that's struggling, and the other one can take the children the other direction, and I think that makes it a lot easier. We went to do the National Archives during her Revolutionary War unit, and it was way too much for our family of 5. Yeah, but you have some amazing, I'm a little bit jealous of her museums. I'm a lot jealous of your museums. We need to go to Washington, D.C. and have some fun. Yeah. There's some awesome museums there. But, I think that you could do, I know there's an Air and Space Museum there. I know that so one of the things that we'll do if we're having family time, but we need to send one child to one area, is we might all go to where the museums are, and he might go to the train museum, or the botanical gardens, while I go to the science museum, and just sort of feel that out. And so then we're together, and They're wonderful and free. Shh, they're not free here at all. But I think that it's I think that it's, if you're really looking at a family outing, come together, have a meal together, split up at the museums. And one of the things I wish, like, our museums aren't open later at night. I wish we could go on dates more at the museum. Yeah. I mean, because we enjoy that kind of stuff. He and I as a couple. And so sometimes we'll try to sneak away during the day so that we can go and actually enjoy some of that. Because we have fun. Eleanor thinks we're really boring.
Yeah.
You go to museums on a date? You're so weird.
We've had conversations as to who's the most boring.
Yeah, we have. That's all good. So I was thinking about something else. Oh, I was thinking about imagery in the museum. So I was thinking about the time that Soraya had the little sadness about. So it might not be imagery that you think is scary. So here at the Science Museum, we were just, when we went that day, it was just a fun explore day. And she, I took her against probably my better judgment in general, but we had friends that we were entertaining. But one of us was able to be with just her. And so I was able to walk through with her and steer her away from things that were not maybe so age appropriate, because it's very, when the overstimulation starts, it's I want to do this and then I want to do that and I want to go here and I want to go, and they can't settle down and learn about one thing because it's just so overstimulating. And so she had already been overstimulated that way.
Yeah.
And we're on our way out. This is so funny. We're on our way out and there's just pictures of like wildlife on the wall on the way out. And there's this salamander from South America that looks very human-like. Remember?
Yeah, and it made her cry.
She cried for like 3 hours. It scared the crap out of her. She cried for like 3. It was so sad. It was like a horrified, like, I'll have to find the picture and post it. It wasn't scary. Like, to me, I looked at it and I was like, yep, that's a lizard.
Well, you never know. I mean, especially the younger the kid is.
Yeah, because I want to say she was 3. She was probably 4.
Yeah, but even at 6.
Even at
like
6,
Saturday, I was out with her and I needed to get this trimmed because it was
Yeah.
kind of getting bushy. And there's a place that I go to that there's usually not a wait for here on Ocean Beach, and she refused to go in there, and I was really confused. And I was like, I don't understand this. And there was like all this kind of weird pop culture stuff all over the walls, but she was set off by an image of Ronald McDonald, and and then I went back.
He's kind of scary.
Well, it is scary, but that set her off, and so I went back there again without her, and I noticed there was also like a picture of Frankenstein's monster that I didn't notice.
Oh, that's probably what it was.
Know.
But you know, I think that we sort of take for granted sometimes because there's a lot of pop culture in our lives that she sees that isn't scary.
Yeah.
That you probably just didn't notice it before. I meant to ask you what it was when you went in there that scared her.
Well, she stresses about skeletons, but then she's seen a picture of Skeletor and she thinks that's silly.
Well, that is.
It is pretty silly, but
silly.
I'm like, what's the difference between? She hasn't watched the show.
We haven't seen Coco because of that. And I want to see it, and it won some awards, and we've had a lot of people tell us how good it is, but it's definitely going to be a rent at home so that I can help her process through the situation.
But it's like too much skeletons.
It is too much skeletons, and I think that she does surprisingly well on Pirates of the Caribbean, but it's because we count how many chickens.
The ride, not the
ride. Yeah, not the movie, the ride
but,
for sure. But we do activities on that ride.
Yeah.
Let's count how many dogs there are. Let's count how many chickens there are.
Sometimes I've gone into Barnes & Noble with the two of them, and then Sam wants to look in the area with the graphic novels, and she would always say, this aisle's too scary, and I'm racking my brain trying to figure out what's scary. I mean, most of the books, it's just you're seeing the spines.
But there must be something that she had seen.
Well, and I felt bad because I guess there were these collections of these DC comics that came with a mask, and there was like a scary Joker mask.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many
things. There's so many things that, and I think it's about us being present, because then when you realized it, you weren't the man up dad. You were like, well, let's get off this aisle because this is scary. And so it's definitely in how you approach it with them after you realize that. Katie says, can I just say that it's relieving to hear that you have those not my finest moments as well? Oh, yes, ma'am, I do. It's a great reminder that even parents who are incredibly intentional make mistakes. I do, and I think that we do make parenting mistakes. I think the difference is that we...
there's children overwhelm and there's parent overwhelm.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And the parent overwhelm is usually when I have diarrhea of the mouth. That's when I'm like... Y'all need to stop talking to me, because if I don't have a minute to process myself, things are going to come out that you're not going to like. Yeah. And then usually they're like, oh, I think I'll be quiet now. Except for Soraya. She's like, poke, poke, poke. Can I poke you some more? I'm just going to poke you some more. That's where she is. And then she's like, I don't understand. I kept poking you and then you blew up. Yup. I did. But no, I mean, you have to, the difference between being an intentional parent and being one that doesn't really think about that is that I do think about that. And so then when something like that happens, like now we can laugh about it. She'll say at the museum, remember that time that you tried to feed me to the megalodon? I'm like, and then I have to say, you're 6. Do you see how far away that is from where you're standing here? Do you really think I would have fed you to that dinosaur? So then she laughs about it. And even though it was not my finest parenting moment, it definitely, because I am intentional and I try to fix the things that I break or that I make the mistakes that I made, that's the difference. The difference is when you can say to your child, I am really sorry, I acted inappropriately. And they will forgive you every single time. Your job is to just try not to act inappropriately like that again. Anyway, no, I just want to say, have a good time when you go to museums. Do your best to be the best parent that you can be. And know that when you mess up, you can fix it. Love on them, hold them. The best thing your child can hear from you when you have messed up is, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Can I hold you? Can we fix it? And then the next time that they flip out, you have to remember, oh yeah, I flip out too. And it's okay. It's okay. That's how we learn. That's how we learn and be a loving source of being able to be forgiving.
Yes.
Have a wonderful week. I hope this has been helpful. I think that my desire for anybody who wants to pass this on to a museum curator that has a children's museum, my desire would be a children's museum that is intentional, and we have some. There are some, like there is the in Salt Lake City, the LDS Church History Museum, and you don't have to be LDS to go there. The reason why I love that museum is it's interactive to a point where the pictures talk, but it's not scary. It might be a little disconcerting at first, but it's not scary. The pictures talk, and there are very calm areas where you can do things. It's very calm. There are people...
Where things aren't spilling out into each other.
Right. There are people in each room that help you through each activity. And that makes it a beautiful, calming museum. And so I guess my hope would be for anybody who is hearing this and is a museum curator or wants to start a children's discovery museum sort of thing, that you keep those things in mind and you be intentional about them. And that feel free to ask us, or ask anybody who truly understands child development from a perspective, a more spiritual perspective, a calmer perspective, not just from a book perspective, because I think that that's where the disconnect tends to be. So anyways, I hope you all have a wonderful week, and we'll see you guys later. Bye.
Bye.